Hi folks, it's Tammy Herman from So Cozy Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make this quilt. I have this pattern. It's called Braided Stars, and you can see why. It has lovely stars and braids running down the side. Very cool pattern. Like most of my quilt patterns, my designs, it is designed specifically for a jelly roll, but don't let that scare you off because you can always use a layer cake or fat quarters or a yardage and cut them into strips. So jelly roll design, adaptable, lots of great things you can do with this quilt. I'm going to show you lots of different ways you can do it, lots of different colorways, and how this thing comes together quickly and is pretty fun. Come on inside my studio and join me. As you can see, I have a version of this quilt hanging on my design wall. I will tell you that when I opened the jelly roll for this one, it was a bit of a challenge because this jelly roll, as you can see, is almost entirely peach and gray. And I had never honestly seen a jelly roll that had only two colors like that. I'm so used to working with bright florals and lots of colors, so this one gave me a bit of a challenge. But it gave me time to think about exactly which strips went where in order to get the needed effect. And you can see it came out great. You can see lots of spirals going down between the stars. It's really a great effect. But I want you to know that this quilt looks really great in lots of colors, lots of patterns. I've done it a couple of different ways, so let's take a look. One of my favorite colorways for this quilt was done with a Moda fabric collection called Reef. This fabric collection has starfish and corals, and it comes in blues and greens and oceany feels, and it's got just a lovely calm feeling to the fabric. I will say though, with this version of the quilt, I don't love the dark blue inner border. If I had it to do over again, I would not have put that inner border because I think it takes away from the colors of the fabric collection. But if you can ignore that inner border and just take a look at how great this fabric looks in the middle of this quilt. This is a completely different look at this quilt with a fabric collection that was selected by one of my daughters. You can see the pinks and the lavenders and just a much softer version of this quilt. Of course, I can't resist the urge to take something with stars and put it in red, white, and blue. And as you can see, this quilt looks absolutely great in patriotic colors. One of the really great things about this quilt is that it's made up of only two blocks. You can see right here, there's a star block, and then there is the braid block that goes right here, and that's it. Once you get those two blocks put together, you're ready to put the quilt together. But, surprise, there's one more thing, which is the key element of both of those blocks is exactly the same. There's really only one key element that you have to master, and that's a half rectangle triangle. So you can see we do a lot of half square triangles in our quilting life. I know you do a ton of them just like I do, but this is a half rectangle triangle, gives it a little sharper spike on the star, but the braid blocks are also made up of half rectangle triangles. So once you master making a half rectangle triangle out of your jelly roll strips, you got it made. So I want you to be able to proceed with this quilt with confidence. And that's the first thing that gives you confidence, is it just takes one piece to put this whole thing together. As we said, this quilt, this particular jelly roll that I opened really was just peach and gray, very muted, very subtle. So I want you to be confident that this quilt will work with the jelly rolls that you have. So I'm going to get out a new one. This is, you think I would have read that before I told you. This is a Riley Blake jelly roll. It's a collection. You can see there's lots of colors. Maybe you can see. There's greens and blues and yellows. So we're going to go ahead and open this and talk about how would I take this jelly roll with all these colors and approach this quilt with confidence. Now I decided, just for a demonstration, that I'm going to use these dark colors for the points of the star with this as the middle of the star. So I'm going to make a blue star today. And then when I go to my braid blocks, I'm going to use this lighter color on the bigger side of the braid and this darker color on the inside. And I'll show you, and we'll talk about that, because I like to have a darker side to make the twist work. And also, I haven't mentioned that this pattern requires background fabric. So if you have a background, a jelly roll that's all white, that is great. If not, just grab your yardage and cut it into 2.5-inch strips. So I have a couple of background strips here as well for us to begin learning how to make these blocks. So let's start with the star block. Now I have pulled out my dark blue because these are the points of the star. And for the points of the star, the pattern, this is all in there. It'll tell you that this is where we're going to make our half rectangle triangles. So when you make a half rectangle triangle, the trick is that the piece of the rectangle that you start with needs to be twice as long as it is wide. So we know a jelly roll strip is 2.5 inches wide. So I'm going to take these selvages off. And so in order to be twice, then the rectangle that we're going to cut is 5 inches. So these will be 5 by 2.5. And so I'm cutting several of these. Now I also need, in order to make those points, I also need background fabric that is 5 by 2.5. Now also, the middle of the star, which I said I was going to use this, is 2 strips. Now it's wider when if you take a look at the picture, the middle is wider than 2.5 strips, or 2.5 inches. So it takes 2 of these put together to make the middle of that star. And the middle of that needs to be 3 3/4 inches. And you'll see that when we get to making our star, you'll understand why. But for now, I'm just going to cut 2 of these for. Now the trick to half rectangle triangles is this. You need to the star blocks with the half rectangle triangles is this. You're going to make a half rectangle triangle that slants to the left, and you're going to make one that slants to the right. And you need to make even numbers of those. So I take my background fabric and split it into 2 piles, 2 even piles. In this case, I have 4, so I have 2 and 2. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to draw a line with a water-soluble pen that starts in this corner and comes down to the opposite corner. Now, on my other stack, I'm going to draw that line the other way, so it's a complete mirror image. So if you were making the whole pattern, you'd have a whole stack of these and you'd go through and do half of them this way and half of them that way, which is what we're going to do right now. Since I only have 4, we'll do it quickly. And there's that one. And this one. Okay, so now I'm going to take the blue rectangle, lay it here. I need matching, so I'm going to do 2 and 2 of my blue, my star points. Here we go. And I didn't grab pins. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to take a rectangle and I'm going to line this background fabric on it, but not like this. When we make half square triangles, we line everything up to where the sides match. What you're going to do to make the half rectangles is you're going to rotate this so it looks kind of funny, and we're going to pin it in place because it's easy for this to move. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to take another one of these. I'm going to rotate it the opposite direction. See, and it's really important to make sure that point and that point matches the point of the fabric below. So please take your time to make those line up perfectly, because that'll be important to you as we start to put this star block together. There. Now, I'm going to take these 2 to the machine, and I am going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of this drawn line on both of these. So I have sewn a 1/4 inch on either side, on both sides of the drawn line on all 4 of these. So now I'm sure this won't surprise you because we make half square triangles all the time. I'm going to take this. This is just like making a half square triangle. I am going to cut them in half right on the drawn line. And that makes these units. So let's do a couple of these. There's one from the left side, and let's do another one from the right side. Okay, so now we have these. Now I'm going to take them, I'm going to press them open, these are tricky because now you've got these, this pointy edge down here. So open them up and press them like this, and now you have this lovely half rectangle unit. And as you can see, that one, I'm going to turn it around here. I'm going to press this one open so you can see this one. I don't know if this is the right name or not, but I would call this a right half rectangle triangle because it starts and goes to the right. And this one is a left half rectangle triangle. And so you can see that they make different units. So for the star block, you need 4 of each of these. So now you can see I have 4 left half rectangle triangles and I have 4 right half rectangle triangles. And let's take a look at these because this is a place where I think people can get nervous. And I want you to not be nervous. This is a place where you need to be confident. These things, despite our best effort to draw a perfect line and stitch perfectly on each side of the line, I swear they all come out a little bit different and a little bit wonky. And it doesn't matter how hard I try. Look, if I tried to line that one up, see how that one's just a little bit different? But what I want to encourage you is to not worry about that at this point because we have an opportunity to fix this coming up here in our pattern. So don't worry, as long as you drew a nice straight line and you sewed nice and straight on that line and cut perfectly, then the fact that they're a little wonky right now, please don't worry. Be confident, we've got an opportunity to make this better. So here's what we're gonna do to make it better. The first thing is we're gonna take these and we're gonna put them the other way. Sorry, I'm put them the other way to make the points of the star. So I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and sew these together, the background together, so you can start to see the points of the star emerge. So let me go put these together real quick and then I'll show you what we're gonna do about fixing the wonky. So I took 1 left half rectangle triangle and 1 right half rectangle triangle and put them together, right sides together on the side that is the background, and sew them together on the background, on the long side of the background. So now I have 4 of these units. You can see it's going to start to make the star, right? You can see this starting to come together, but they're pretty wonky. We haven't trimmed any dog ears or anything, right? So here's our opportunity to make it darn near perfect. I'm gonna not say perfect, but darn near perfect. So this unit gets trimmed to 3 3/4 inches. Remember, we cut our middle piece to 3 3/4, and you probably wondered why, but that's why. Because these units that make the star block are 3 3/4. Remember, this was a 5-inch unit. Now it's got itself to about 4.5 right now. Well, if I slide it down closer to 5, but that's quite a bit of trimming. So this is where you want to be really deliberate and think about your trimming. So we've got star points right here that we don't want to lose, right? We never want to lose our points if we can keep from it. So we need a little extra past these points so that when we sew a seam there, we will not lose our points. So I'm going to take this and trim it just a little bit because I'm trying to get to 3 3/4, but I got a long way to go here. So I'm going to take that top off. I also know it needs to be 3 3/4 inches wide. So let me check the width here, and that's going to help me get these dog ears off. So if I put that there and I go to 3 3/4, that gives me a chance to take off these dog ears and square this up and put it over here and square this. Oh, I missed and ruined on my ruler. Okay, so now the last decision. So now we need it to be 3 3/4 this direction. So I'm going to put it here, 1 2 3 3/4. So look how much I'm thinking about cutting off here. I might just trim this just a little bit more. I'm trying not to lose my points, right? And then I'm going to come over here, and my 3 3/4 line is right here. And so I'm going to trim it right there. And that's taken off quite a bit on the bottom. But here's what I want you to not worry about is if we took off, which we clipped the bottom here on this one, but this is going to bump up against the middle of the star and you're not going to notice. It's going to be far less noticeable if you lose a little bit of this point than if you lose your points on your star. So work hard, think about your trimming, and leave room so that you don't lose your star points. And if you have to take a little off here, I would not worry about that. It will not be noticeable. It would be much better to keep your star points. So I'm going to cut all 4 of these units to 3 3/4. So we now have 4 lovely units that are 3 3/4 inches square that are for the points of our star. Now remember, for the middle of our star, we cut these 2 3 3/4 inch strips. So I'm going to go sew those together and then trim this unit down so it is also 3 3/4 inches square. Okay, so now I have the middle sewn together, and as you can see, obviously when you put two 2.5 inch strips together, they're bigger than 3 3/4. So we're going to trim this down. I admit I kind of like to try to keep the middle seam in the middle. There's no reason to do that. It's just sort of a silly thing I try to do. So I'm going to take a little bit off both sides. Definitely not necessary. Just a strange thing I like to try to do. So I'm going to go to 3 3/4. So here is the middle of my star. That is my star middle. And then I also had 4 3 3/4 inch squares that the pattern told me to cut of background fabric. So now we have what we need to lay this out. So here I'm going to lay out this one. I'm going to be honest, I have a little trouble finding the right side of this fabric. You can see it's raveling on me a little, and this is maybe not my favorite background fabric. I should have maybe found a different one. Okay, so we're going to put one there and a block here. I'm going to slide it over a little bit. There, a piece of background fabric here. We can figure out where the front is. Then we're going to put a star aside there. Here's our middle. I'm going to put a star point here. You can see this is all coming together just fine. And there you have the pieces that you need for this star block. So the braid block might be a little bit tricky to understand as I'm talking about left and right side or how to think about your fabric. So let's just take an up close look at one of these blocks. So the braid block is made of 6 half rectangle triangles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I like, and I'll step back so you can see this better, to do the side with 4 to be my lighter side fabric, and the side with 2 to be my darker fabric. There's my image, sorry. I like put the lighter and then the darker, and you can see as you step back, that gives you this kind of twist. Now this is not necessary. This is perfectly okay to do it completely scrappy and not do this. This is just the way I like to do it so that you see the twist running through. So you're going to see me selecting a lighter fabric for what I'm going to call the bigger side. There are 4 half rectangle triangles in that side. And I'm going to select a darker fabric for the smaller side where there are only 2 half rectangle triangles. And then I'm going to flip those blocks as we put them together, and that's what gives us the swirl. So as I mentioned on the wall, I'm selecting the lighter fabric, or the fabric that has a white background, for the bigger side of my braid block, and I'm selecting this darker fabric for the smaller side of my braid block. So there will be 4 half rectangle triangles made out of this fabric and 2 half rectangle triangles made out of this fabric for each block. So I've drawn my lines on my background fabric. I'm going to do exactly like I did on the star block. I'm going to take that and line it up corner to corner, just like that, and pin it. Now I need a left and a right for each block. So I'm going to do that one, and then this one goes this way. So that's the key to this, is to always be even on your left and right half rectangle triangles. And then I'm going to take that to the machine and sew a 1/4 inch on each side. I'll do the same for these, and we'll have the pieces we need to assemble a braid block. Okay, so I went ahead and put together all the half rectangle triangles for the braid block, because you already know how to do half rectangle triangles because we did them when we did our star. So I didn't think you needed to see that go together again. So I'm going to put these here, and I'm going to pull down what I need. So as we talked, there's a big side and a small side to this braid block. So that I need 4 of this kind. So it's 2 lefts and 2 rights. And I always have to struggle to get them together here. There we go. And did I pick up the wrong one? 2 lefts and 2 rights. Here, there, starting to come together. And then I need a left and a right of the dark side. So I'm going to put that here. and put that here. And now you can see that braid block coming together. Now, before I stitch this together, I am going to trim those dog ears, because that makes it, I think when you have that much of a dog ear, it makes it very difficult to see your seam. So I am going to trim these up. That wasn't very good. There, I'm going to trim these up and get them all cleaned up so that they're easier to see. And then I am going to assemble them just like this. I'll put these 3 across the top together, and then the 3 at the bottom together, and then I'll sew each row, and you will have this lovely braid block. So hopefully you can see how that is coming together now that we're getting some of the dog ears off of there. And I really like having the larger side be light and the other side be dark, because when you put together several of these blocks, it's going to make that really cool twist going down your quilt. It just gives it some depth and movement in the quilt. So there are the 6 half rectangle triangles that go together for this braid block. I'll go assemble that, and I'll assemble a second one here, and we'll take a look at how that starts to go together. Okay, so we have these 2 braid blocks put together. Now, as you can see, here we are again with some pretty wonky things going on. These half rectangle triangles can be tricky, and I probably made them a little extra wonky just to prove the point here, that because these are pretty bad. But what I want you to see is, don't worry, because the way this pattern is written, there's always room for trimming. So in this case, this block is going to get trimmed to 5 inches wide and 8.5 inches long. So I'm going to line this up, and I'm going to trim it down, and you're going to see me lose some of the points, and we're going to talk about that. That's okay. For this pattern, it is okay. I'm actually going to move this a little bit. There we go, so that I don't want to lose fabric. There. This one, I really overdid the wonky on this, trying to make a point. So I'm going to trim this down. You can see I got just a little bit of a bad edge there. It'll be all right though. So I took off the points. I'll show you why in a little bit. Don't worry about here. We were definitely trying on this star block not to lose our points. Here, I am not worried about it, because that is by design. So this is going to be 5 inches wide. And it's going to cut awful close to this point. I'm not going to worry about that. And then these need to be, didn't make it, 8.5 inches long. So I'm going to turn them this way. I think they're both closer to about 9. So I'm going to take off a little bit on both edges. Again, the beauty of this block is, and what we're trying to create with the braid that goes down this quilt, is I can cut some things off a little and it'll be just fine, because we want the braid to flow. We don't want it to have sharp points. We want it to look more flowy, so that it's in complete contrast from the star, which is very pointed. We want the braid blocks to flow a little bit. So we're taking off those sharp points on this, and that's just fine. So there are 40 of these blocks in the quilt. Every single one is made exactly the same way. Then when you get ready to put them together, you're going to flip them every other one. If you did the dark, if you did it scrappy, then it doesn't matter at all. You could just put them all together the same way if you want, just like this. But if you did the dark and the light on purpose, then you're going to flip every other one, so that when you sew them together, you start to get that twist and that braid going down your quilt. It is your choice. Either one works just great. 40 of these, 28 of these, and that's it. Now, I will say that it may seem a little like, whew, that was a lot today. We're starting and stopping and doing a lot, but that's because I'm doing one block and one block. But remember, the thing I wanted you to take away from this is that these half rectangle triangles are the main piece of the entire quilt. So when you start to do the pattern, you're not going to start and stop like I did. You're going to cut all those rectangles. You're going to put all those half rectangle triangles together. It's going to be able to string, that through very quickly. And then these are quick to assemble. And so it's a joy to have something that came from a jelly roll that doesn't look like a jelly roll. It's not a bunch of strips. I love it when people pick it up and say, you made that from a jelly roll? That's crazy. And that's what this gives you, sharp images that almost look like they were paper pieced. And we did all that from a jelly roll. So we worked our way through the making of the 2 blocks that are the what make up this quilt today. Here's our star block that we worked on. And we'll put it there so you can see this was the block we accomplished today. It doesn't want to stay very well. Pin that edge. And then just stay there. And then here is our 2 braid blocks that we made. And you can see that they go just like this. Now, it is tricky. A couple things about this pattern that we haven't really talked about yet is that this is 10 inches. These are only 8.5 unfinished sizes. So that makes different size rows. So that's why there's more of these. So they don't line up perfectly when you do these rows. So when you get all these blocks done, then the assembling of the quilt top is super simple. It's just rows. So you do a row of stars, and then you do a row of the braid blocks, and you alternate stars and braid blocks, stars and braid blocks. And so that's why there's more of the braid blocks, because they're shorter. And then you'll notice at the top, there's just a little bit of fill to make, because this braid block, even when you put 8 of these in a row, they still aren't quite as long as 7 stars. So there's just a little fill right here, but you won't even notice that once you quilt it. So we have this quilt top is done up until it still needs borders, and of course it needs quilted. So I hope you enjoyed learning about the component parts today. I will go off and finish this quilt top, put the borders on so you can see. There's 2 in the pattern. There's 2 ways that the borders are talked about. You can either buy border fabric if you want to really frame it with something particular, or when you finish, there are 8 jelly roll strips left from your jelly roll, so you could do a patchwork or scrappy border. Those are both talked about in the pattern. If you want the pattern to the quilt, I will put that in the description as well. That is on my website. I sure hope you enjoyed learning about half rectangle triangles out of jelly rolls, because they're super unique, but really make a fun quilt. And I hope that you will take a minute to like and subscribe. That will really help me. And we'll be back. I love jelly rolls, so I promise you I will be back with another jelly roll quilt before you know it. So thanks for checking in. Take care.